All right, everyone, it's time for another conversation on Revival Town Podcast. Our guest today, Josiah Woods, is a programming director, video director on the Elevation Youth Creative Team at Elevation Church in North Carolina. He works alongside the programming team to help put on events like Rhythm Nights. Josiah loves being able to use his and the team's gifts to put on an experience that reaches youth who are far from Christ. At his heart, he loves filmmaking and is very passionate about using that format to give people a chance to have an intimate encounter with God. He hopes to continue down that path and keep making bigger productions and films that present the gospel to people in unique ways that are struggling in their walk with God. And he's here right now. Welcome, Josiah.
How's it going, guys?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain, you know?
That's good. Well, let me give a bit of backstory for folks. So Josiah, you'd be like, man, how do you get someone from Elevation to come on to Revival Town Podcast? Well, Josiah is from Peoria originally and went through Peoria Christian School here in town. If you're listening, you know what that is. But for my connection, there's been many over the years. I'm very good friends with his mom and dad. And Jeff, his dad, was on staff at Dream Center for many years as our creative director, brand manager. And at that time, Josiah was still in school, but he was a big part of an event that we do at the Dream Center called Mission Peoria, which is a week-long missions trip for students from all over the country to come. And in fact, when you moved out to California, you were still flying in to come every year to Mission Peoria.
Yeah, correct. We did. Yeah.
So what I thought we would do today, that's where the connection comes.
Yeah.
So
you were at Peoria Christian when I spoke in chapel.
Yep. There definitely a few times I remember the curly hair. That's the first thing I remember. I was like, yeah, I know that guy.
Well, both of my kids went to PCS, and my daughter's a junior. She'll go back for her senior year. She's homeschooled for the rest of this year and then going back, COVID, and my wife's ill and has some stuff going on, but love PCS. In fact, going to the regional basketball game tonight.
Oh, you. All right. So what we wanted to do was, it wasn't just we're going to get Josiah on because we know him from Peoria days, but we're really proud of what he is doing now at Elevation Church, which is, if you're in the States, I mean, you know of Elevation Church, you know Steven Furtick, Pastor Steven Furtick, and obviously beyond the States, he's very, very well known. But we just felt today it'd be great to get to know Josiah, about his journey. There's the word, Chuck. Yeah. They're always
journey.
Saying I use the word journey.
Take us on this journey, Josiah. Can you go ahead and unpack what it means to be at Elevation Church?
So, Josiah, why don't you tell us, because you didn't just go straight from high school to Elevation. I mean, there has been a journey for you that I want you to unpack if that's good.
Yeah.
I told you, journey to unpack. There you go.
Yeah.
Those are two words.
There's no other way around it.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah. I remember growing up, like, I never really thought I would do anything creatively, because both my parents, like when you see my dad did a lot of creative work, my both parents were photographers. I never really thought I would get into the creative world, especially I thought I'd get into the church world. I remember probably sophomore, junior year, I remember having a conversation with my dad saying, I don't think I would never work for a church. And that's kind of like, God kind of takes what you said and kind of turns it on its face. And that was kind of him doing that. But I remember we can kind of start. I remember, I think it was 2014 Mission Peoria. I remember the week prior, we had picked up everything and moved to California. And for me, that was like a big shock, big culture shock, and kind of everything. Like, I was leaving PCS, leaving kind of all my friends. And for me, that's kind of like when the plot kind of thickened. I feel like from that point, I kind of turned, after going to Mission Peoria, I flew back to California and just really felt kind of lost. And it was a real struggle. I remember really kind of at that point, I remember there were a few pastors in my life that had kind of had affairs and kind of had things that happened that made me think, like, I don't know why I'm a Christian, don't know why I believe in this stuff, and kind of really went through a whole season of like just questioning everything. Started saying yes to drugs, started saying, like, really rebelling against my parents, and just kind of struggling and feeling like not really having a community or identity or anything like that. And I remember about 2 years later, I was looking for schools. And by that point, I kind of fallen back in love with the idea of film. I remember growing up as a kid, I would go on like wedding sets with my parents and like film Super 8 and stuff like that, and just kind of gravitate towards that. I remember like watching movies like Inception and stuff like that, and thinking, man, I love the idea of like taking someone on a journey or an experience.
There you go.
All right.
See, win him over already.
And at that point, I was like, okay, I want to go to film school. And it kind of like, we looked at a few schools. We looked at Columbia in Chicago. A good friend of mine, Seth Lowe, which you guys probably know, he went to Columbia and he was kind of talking it up. Looked at going to Full Sail in Florida. And my parents just kind of kept like challenging me to kind of dig a little bit deeper, like don't settle on the first option. And randomly came up a school in England called the Met Film School. It's out of Ealing, London, which is in West London. And it was a 6-month program on just filmmaking. And I was like, you know what? It's a third of the price of all these other schools. I would love to go abroad for 6 months. Let's do it. Yeah. And so at that point, like still question my faith. At that point, I kind of was like, whatever. I don't really believe in it. Don't really want to partake in this. But there was one filmmaker in particular. His name was Solomon Lithelm. He's he used to do some work for Hillsong Australia. Now he does a lot of freelance stuff. And he was doing like some really crazy work for Hillsong and just for other Christian media outlets. And I was really just like kind of in awe of like, well, I've never seen anything like, when I think of Christian film, I think of like Gospel Bill and like the Passion of the Christ, like these real like Fireproof, Facing Giants, which are in their own genre. But for me, like I had never seen anything be at the level of like creativity and trailblazing. And it just kind of interested me. And I kind of digged a little bit deeper into Hillsong a little bit. And so when I went to London, I started attending church. And I felt like I had really been a 180 in my life. I remember one of the first weeks there, the pastor there, Gary Clark, he preached a message on the idea of like not putting your faith in man, because they will trust your man because they will like surely let you down. And for me, that was like a big conviction, because to me, I was like, dang, that's what I've been doing. Like I had these pastors that had let me down. And so I kind of shifted. And from there, I was kind of all in. I was like getting into it, kind of started going back to church. I got really connected at Hillsong, and it was kind of almost like a full-time volunteer there doing video work while I was also going to school at the same time. I was telling my wife today, I was an arm bearer for them for the two youth pastors, Dan Black and Dan Watson. And I would carry their books around, their water, and just kind of like it was a little bit of a humbling season of like, okay. But it was cool to just kind of get into the gospel. I felt like reinvigorated. And for the first time, I kind of felt like this was something that I believed for once. It wasn't just like my parents' faith, but it was my faith. And I remember going to Hillsong conference, and there's a guest preacher there by the name of Pastor Steven Furtick. And that was the first time I remember hearing anything about Elevation Church or Steven Furtick. And I remember being at my computer working on a recap, and I just heard this guy yelling. It's like super loud and energized. I was like, who is preaching right now? And I looked behind him, and it was Pastor Steven. And that was kind of my first interaction with him. And kind of fast forward, due to the things I had, once school finished, I had to move back home, which I was not a fan of. Like I thought for sure, like Hillsong London was going to be my next home, was going to live there. Like that was going to be my career. And when I came back home, kind of fell back into some old patterns and old habits. And I remember listening to a sermon randomly. It was like 3 a.m. one night, and I listened to a sermon by Pastor Steven called "It Had to Happen." And it's about the story of Paul when he crashes on the island of Malta. And the idea of it had to happen. And to me, it was like just a new, like I've never heard a sermon preached like that. The idea of like it was just a crazy thought, and the way he like deciphered the scriptures and then related them to like nowadays situations, felt really convicted there. And I applied for a job at Elevation, got clean, and within 6 months, I found myself at an internship with Elevation. And again, went through another humbling season. I remember telling my mom, I'll definitely have a job. If I have 3 months to prove these guys I'm good enough, I'll have it in a month and a half. Like really just came out very arrogant, very cocky. And it was probably, I did an internship a 6-month apprenticeship and a 6-month contract. So basically a year and a half. And they were probably, I would say, some of the toughest months of my life, just feeling like, man, everything I'm making is not coming out like I want it to. Just like having like, I've always thought I'm good at first impressions, but to Elevation Church, I was not. So I struggled. I met my wife in the first few months of being at Elevation. And I remember I'd kind of been on a bunch of different teams at that point, and there really wasn't like a youth creative team per se. And I had, throughout that time, met a guy named Tim Summers, who's now our youth pastor, and kind of oversees all our youth. And at that time, he was in a campus and was a youth director for a specific campus. And so, but he helped oversaw the Instagram page. And so me and one of my other friends, we started volunteering in our extra hours of making just Instagram content. And I remember towards the end of my apprenticeship, he approached me and goes, hey, pastor had this idea of a YouTube for our youth. And I want to bring you on board. And I thought, oh, great, this is it. This is gonna be great. And the next 3 months were probably the toughest 3 months I've ever had, through working like 90-hour weeks, through dealing with pride and having to crush my ego, through just feeling like, dang, it's me against the world. I remember being in a car with my girlfriend at the time, but now my wife, and just saying, babe, I can't do this. Like, we're in tears, like, I can't do this. This is it. Like, I'm gonna pack up. And just something.
Let's pause there. Was it the amount of work that you were thrown at, or the excellence that Elevation have to trying to hit that? You know what I mean?
It was a mixture. It was a mixture of both, because we had never really done anything like a vlog. And so in my construct of like what a film or video should look like is so different than like what a David Dobrik, Logan Paul, Nelk Boys vlog looked like. So to me, the guy who was my boss, Tim Summers, he had a little bit of creative background, but like was a youth pastor. And so he's giving me this feedback, and, you know, my pride saying, no, this is not how you do it. You need to have it like this. And so it was a certain level of excellence in the idea of like how it connects to people, but in the idea of how we got it there was not the norm. And for me, it was like almost like I was hitting like a wall. Like, no, this isn't how it should happen. It has to be different. And it took a while for me to kind of like, no, like for me to say, who cares how we get there? If the end product is with this, let's get there. And that really was like a tough thing for me. But I think the biggest thing was the amount of work. And so we were pumping out 3 vlogs a week plus Instagram content, and having to work. There was consecutive weeks where I was working like 90-hour weeks. And for me, like, I had never pushed myself that hard. I thought I had. Coming in, again, I would say I had great work ethic, but that took me to a whole new meaning. And, you know, looking back, I see now it's like, you know, they call it like the David in the field season, where you're out there watching sheep, not really knowing what you're doing, but you're learning the essential tools that's going to help you in the future. And so in the moment, didn't see like that. And I remember telling my wife, like, I think I'm going to quit. I texted the creative director of Elevation Church. I said, hey, can we get lunch? And I just told him, like, hey, I'm not feeling this, not loving this. He was like, just give it time. We'll get better. And for me, like, I had never really quit anything in my life. And so something that sounds like, hey, just keep digging, we'll get it there. And it was like the next 3 months, I had finally kind of met that breakthrough of being humbled and kind of figure out what's going on, and kind of got my feet planted. And from there was kind of no looking back. I feel like our youth creative team kind of exploded from there. We've now brought on, I think we have a team of 14. That was now just 2 people. And so now I kind of help oversee all video. I help oversee all programming. Me and a few guys help oversee all the programming. Sure. But it was a very intense season. And now looking back, I'm like, I know, like, we had a thing called last year. Well, the past 2 years we've had a thing called Youth X that we do. But the past 2 years due to COVID, they've been just live streams. So the first year it was 72 hours of straight live streaming. It was all programmed out. And then last year was 168 hours of streamed program. So a full week. And end up making last year we ended up making about 65 videos in the span of 2 months, and they were high quality videos. And for me, like, definitely would never have gotten there if it wasn't for the first few years of me working on YouTube content, reworking the way my mind kind of sees film. But very thankful for that process in that season. And even up till last month, I had the privilege of working on a video for our youth night called "The Tragedy of the Apostle Paul," which is something that I kind of came up with, and the whole idea was this reimagining of the story of the Apostle Paul in modern times, and didn't really think of it anything until we aired it. But thinking at that moment, I was like, dang, this is the same Bible character that helped me in that season when I watched It Had to Happen, that Pastor Steven preached. And now I have the honor and privilege of being able to tell the same story to our youth. And so it's really been a really cool full circle moment for me. But it's been intense. It's been a struggle, but very grateful for where I'm at today and where the church and the pastor I get to serve under and the work I get to help create.
That's good. That's
Wow.
good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I'm sure you're glad that you didn't quit, right?
Yes.
Opportunity.
Yeah.
I had something
Definitely
similar happen to me early on in ministry. I was working for a national youth ministry in Tulsa, and I was attending Church on the Move, which produced Gospel Bill. And back in the day, but there was a show called Fire by Night hosted by Blaine Bartell. And then when he left, this guy named Eastman Curtis took over, and I was working for Eastman, and he had been the youth pastor at Church on the Move before he started his own ministry. And there was just a real rough season where, I mean, I was young, I was still single, and on the road traveling throughout the United States and Canada doing youth conventions. And he had a national television show at the time. And there were some things that happened and I almost quit. In fact, I did quit in my mind, and I would drive to the edge of town, practice leaving. I mean, I was done. Right. And, but I'm looking back now, I'm so glad that I didn't, because I had so much to learn, that God took me through that season and was shaping me and shaping my character and all of those things. And then I ended up getting to go and co-produce 13 episodes of that television show. I was able to witness some things and learn some things that really God was preparing me to plant a church here that I'm still now pastoring more than 23 years later. So, man, I commend you for sticking it out, and I'm excited to see what God's going to continue to do in you and through you because of your obedience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hey, Mission Peoria was getting you ready for them 90-hour weeks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those early mornings. Man. I still remember those mornings. Those were rough mornings.
Well, I've actually been impacted personally by Elevation. It was several years ago. My wife and I flew out to Charlotte and went to a conference there, and it was limited to just 150 people, 150 pastors. And I'm thinking, man, it was probably 10 years ago, maybe. I don't know. How Elevation is how old now? You guys just had an anniversary, didn't you?
Yeah, 16 years this year.
So I think it was about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, though, when I was there. And I was, I got to meet Pastor Steven, as everybody did. We stood in line and got to meet him and shake his hand and do a picture with him and that sort of thing. But what my biggest takeaway was the servants' hearts of everyone there. Like, every pastor had a host. I'm still friends with my host. I mean, that's how much of an impact he made. I mean, an impression he made. I mean, I came out of one of the sessions. He had already contacted my secretary here, found out what drink I liked at Starbucks, and he was standing there waiting with my Starbucks drink. He made reservations at P.F. Chang's for my wife and I. The hostess gave us a gift at P.F. Chang's from him with a card thanking us for being at Elevation. And I mean, I was just blown away by the hospitality of everyone, and then sending us home with a thumb drive with handbooks and just the creative process of everything you guys did way back then. And so I can't even imagine where things are at today, but I was, Andy, personally impacted.
Let's talk about that. What is the cultural climate like there being on staff? I was on staff at Cross Point down in Nashville, which is a larger church. And what hit me the most with a lot of these larger churches is culture is everything. Yeah. Right. When you've got a smaller church, sometimes everyone's doing everything, so the culture can get a little bit lost. But when you start getting to some of these bigger churches, that's what you live and breathe by, right? Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I remember I came down for preview weekend, which is kind of the idea of like, it's basically like a weekend job interview. And felt the same thing, like, man, the amount of, because I came from Hillsong, which I thought was like an amazing church and had great things, great culture. But when I came to Elevation, the culture was just so different and so almost like intoxicating. What is this? What are y'all drinking? Like, I need to get involved with this. And like the level of excellence and the thought that goes into things, I think really is like what like sets us apart. And the reason why I feel like I feel led to work here is it's like, even with the smallest things of like, we name each like meeting room with a certain name that's a certain part of our history. And we call it like the last 10% of like that last 10% of excellence. Like pastor talks about it. When he was a young boy, his pastor asked him to get some hot dogs and stuff for an after church lunch. And the normal 90% would be, I get my hot dogs, my bread, the meat, the ketchup, the mustard. But the extra 10% would be, do you have your plates? Do you have your napkins? Do you have a vegetarian option? Do you have sides? Do you have stuff to pick it up? Where's it like, and that is where we kind of put like that last 10%. Yeah. And I think the real thing of like why Elevation is so successful is just the vision that comes from pastor. And the idea that vision leaks. And so, the same idea, like when Jesus performed the miracle with the oil and with pouring the oil into the jars. And as soon as the jars stopped, the oil stopped. And so the idea of like, are you constantly giving vision? Is it constantly leaking out? Because when you stop giving it, people stop taking onto it and grabbing onto it. But people have caught on to Pastor Steven's vision so much, and it's become like their own MO. It's become their own, we call it a why here. Like, what's your why? At the end of the day, when you wake up at 6 a.m. and you don't want to preach another sermon, you don't want to drive to work, what's that why? That's like, no, this is why I'm here to do this. And so I think pastor does a great job of setting the right people in leadership, setting up with phenomenal teachings every weekend, and within the sermons on Sundays, within our staff meetings. And then even like my boss, Tim Summers, like, he's done such a good job of like, cascading leadership to where I'm still getting vision from my boss, and being casted vision and knowing like, this is why we're here. And so like, I know when we first came in, we kind of expanded our team to a youth team, to more than just me and Tim. We came in and he had the vision, he had the mission, he had the why of why we're doing this. So at any point, why am I doing this video? Oh, let me think back to our vision and why we're doing this. Okay, now it makes sense. And it helps too, just with the extra 10% of like, okay, is this video achieving what we're trying to set out to do? It actually isn't. So let's cut it and let's go back to the drawing board. Let's refigure it out. That's good. But there's just something about the culture here. And I think that really is why it's so like, people just want to be a part of it. It's contagious. Like anytime we have to do something like an inside elevation, or we did something this past year called Leader Advance for youth pastors around the world and for our own youth leaders. And it's the same heart, Pastor Steven and Pastor Holly, of like, let's bring people in, let's love on them, let's set them back out. Because it's not just us and other churches. We're all one church, all trying to achieve the same goal. And for us, it's to see people far from Christ be raised to life in Jesus, And so I don't know if that answered your question, but that's good.
That's good. One of the staff values that we have at Dream Center is fill it to the brim. And the whole concept of, it's easy to fill it halfway or 2/3 of the way, but if you fill it to the brim, then God can bring the overflow. Mm-hmm. You've got to bring your best all the way to that brim. So that's from environments to, with Mission Peoria, where people are going to sleep, where they're going to eat, what's the welcome like? How do we get everyone through things, getting onto buses, right? Like that whole thinking everything. And I think the church has been terrible at this for years. Mm-hmm. That's not to slam or throw churches under the bus.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, man.
But just the detail, me and Chuck were talking just a week ago. Church starts actually at the road, right? Mm. What is the experience like from the road when people pull in to the way to the platform and then beyond, right? So, that whole, okay, how do we fill it to the brim? How do you take it beyond what would the norm be?
Yeah.
I think it's so crucial. Now, flipping gears a bit, that you're not the only Illinois guy on staff, right? There is a guy
We
called.
actually have quite a few. I actually
dear.
just found two other people from Illinois. That one of them is Matt Hemley, who also went to Northwoods.
Okay.
And then another guy named Jared Olson. I'm sure there's a few more, but he's from Springfield, Illinois.
Wow.
But there are two guys on our staff from Rockford as well.
Yeah. So John Rush is someone I followed for years. He was the worship pastor at a big church in Rockford, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
He's now with you guys. Do you get to work with him a lot, or are you still really with Tim, or how does that all work?
Yeah. So everything. He's what we would call a youth director, which is basically our youth pastor for a specific campus. And so we help them a lot with, like, at the Valentine, which the campus he works at has a youth night, creating assets for him. But the cool thing about John, he also helps oversee our gaming stuff. So he helps oversee Twitch and helps with our new thing we're starting, which is Discord, which is a really thing we're really excited about and kind of trying to push now. But yes, we work a lot with John. John's been on staff, I think, for a little over 2 years now.
Okay.
But came in, had the Illinois fire, excited.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you guys are about the Enneagram, but me and John are both Enneagram 3-wing 4. So we're very alike in the idea of achievement first. But yeah, John's a great guy. And we definitely, even yesterday, we were working on stuff with him for one of the Twitch tournaments we were putting on last night.
Okay, let's pause here, because there's probably a whole crowd that are like, he's mentioned Twitch twice in the last 30 seconds. Yeah. Can you open that world a little bit for us?
My 14-year-old son would perk up right now. I'm sure when he's listening, that's going to get his attention. Twitch, wait, what?
Yeah, so Twitch is a cool thing that we've been on since COVID hit. We had kind of been talking about it a little bit beforehand. But when COVID hit, to us, it was like, it's game on. Like, we feel like a lot of people are kind of like, well, we can't do anything. We're going to cancel our conference and do this stuff. But for us, we went from posting 3 times on Instagram to 7 times a day. We went from having maybe one IG live a week or month to let's go live every day. The idea was, like, these youth are going to be in their house sitting, having actually a lot they could do. Why not one of them be, let's go to church, or let's have an encounter with Christ in my living room or my bedroom. And so one of the ways that John and me and John had a conversation of like let's get Twitch, let's get it going. And so Twitch is basically like a live stream for video games. So someone can get on and stream Call of Duty, Fortnite, 2K, like any of the games. And it creates a community, so that we have a legit community of people that I've not even met. That we have this really cool story of one of our campus pastors, his nephew, I believe, who lives in Hawaii, was able to come to Youth X, our summer camp. And he found out about it from Twitch. He saw Elevation YTH streaming, I think it was Fortnite, and got involved. He actually won one of the tournaments. And our CP was saying how much, like, he wasn't really about church or anything like that. And we've heard countless stories of, like, people that, you would never would see in a church or never thought would be in church have. The idea is it's an access point. So for us, we want to create as many access points as we can, because not everyone wants to get on Facebook. We know Facebook's a specific type of person. So for us, it's creating more access points. And so that's why we are on TikTok. That's why we're on Discord, because there's different people on each of these apps. And so the goal of Twitch is to find that person that's in love with games, but also has a relationship with Christ. And we can merge those two and create a great community while we're playing Fortnite,
Wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's really good. So let me ask this question. You mentioned you went to 7 times a day posting on Instagram and once a day going live. Are you guys still keeping that up, or have you gone down a bit?
So it changes. It's constantly changing, whether it be in the season we're in or what the data is telling us. Right now we're posting a few times a day. I wouldn't say 7. It got to a point where we felt like our stuff's kind of becoming white noise, and we're not getting the same engagement we were at first. Also, we're not in house arrest anymore. The pandemic's kind of coming to a slow release, and so we probably changed it like 5 times. Pastor talks about the idea of, like, always reinventing yourself, and the idea of, like, can you reinvent? That's why you see, like, all of these tech companies and, like, stars. You see, like, like some of like these crazy, like Charlie D'Amelio is a good example. Like she was huge on TikTok, big, became the most followed person on TikTok, but it's kind of since then kind of trickled, kind of, you don't really hear much about her. But then you have someone like David Dobrik, who was a huge Vine star, which basically was TikTok before TikTok. And then once Vine died, he changed his format. He reinvented himself into YouTube and then became a massive YouTuber. So the idea of like always be reinventing yourself. And so we're always kind of looking back and kind of reevaluating, like, is this doing what we're trying to do? And if not, let's change it. And so whether it be on our YouTube, our TikTok, our Instagram, Facebook, Discord, we're always trying to like figure out, okay, let's reevaluate. We literally had a meeting like 2 weeks ago and kind of like rethought through things. We're getting ready to amp up towards like a summer event. And so like, okay, let's reevaluate what we're doing on Instagram. And so right now we're posting, the goal is to post 1 to 3 times a day, every day.
Okay.
What is that Instagram account? What's the URL or the handle?
Elevation Youth YTH.
Okay.
All right.
Very cool. I'm going to check that out. So can you take us a little bit through the creative process? And is it the same process for youth as it is for adults? Do you guys have similar? I'm sure there's probably some things that are in place, but when it comes to creativity, are you allowed to do your own thing, or is it pretty much the same process?
Yeah, so it kind of differs on teams. It's kind of up to them and what they decide to do. But for our team, it kind of always starts with the vision. I kind of have this Enneagram called ARC. So whenever I create a video, I create an ARC. So the A stands for analyze. So for us, I always want to analyze like what we're talking about. So for us, we have a catalog that we release every month for our e-groups, which is basically like a small group, that each week kind of talks to a different topic, all about the same topic, but like goes into different levels of that topic. So for me, I always start there and I analyze it and kind of think, how can I, what are we trying to get at? And so in last August, we had this idea. We were talking about, for us, we always want to teach our youth to have audacious faith, be honoring, and and have generosity. And so we were kind of going into the idea of faith. And so I realized in the catalog, we talked a lot about Bible characters like Moses, Abraham and Isaac. I'm forgetting them now, but we went into a bunch of like different characters, and our person who writes the calendar, her name's Ashley. She kept talking about having even if faith. And so to me, I was like, dang, I like that, even if. And so then the next part of ARC is R, which is reimagine. So reimagine how you could tell this story. So like, a lot of times the Bible stories have been told so many times. Like the idea like we have the Apostle Paul video was like, okay, I want to reimagine how people see Paul. And so we had Paul start out like a drug dealer, a man of the neighborhood, well respected, but also fear, like Paul was. And when he went to, and then the idea of like he had a life-changing moment, and the idea of you see Paul in prison preaching. So at that time, I was watching a lot of this series called The Mayor of Kingstown, and it's all about this these prisons in this town. And I love the imagery. I was like, man, what if we put Paul? I want to see Paul in there. And so we had to reimagine the story.
Sure.
And then I'm honestly forgetting what C is. I have it written down. 1 second.
Hey, you're good. That's good that you took something like the prison that you were watching on TV and to be able to bring that feel,
Yeah, I can get back to that. But I first went C, which stands for collaborate. And so Pastor talks a lot about collaboration, the idea of like the amount of ideas I've had that I've thought been great. And then my boss, Tim, or one of the guys on our team, Evan, has like taken that and then like, well, what if you did it like this? Or what if you should like that? And then it becomes so much bigger than us. I feel like God's created us to be, for relationships. And I feel like creativity is the same way. It's not meant to be a single soul person, but it's meant to be shared with others. And, the same idea of like one strand is easy to break, but when you time 3 together, it's a lot harder. So the idea is like one person can come up with a great idea, but you got 3 people on it, all with the same vision and why, it become a lot stronger. And so the idea of collaborating. So usually that's how our process starts.
Sure.
But getting back to like the reimagine, when you're talking about the prisons, like we call it the art of capture is what we call it. And the idea of like, you're always like intaking stuff. You're always like, and the idea too is like, it's always weird before it's cool, like when Kanye West first came out with like these dad shoes, everyone made fun of them, but now you see all these youth wearing them.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's like, I can't remember what book it's in, but there's a book where it talks about Nike when they were coming up with the idea of their new fly knit pattern. They started looking at leaves and how leaves would their fibers, or whatever you call them, would like blend together. And that's what gave them the inspiration for the new fly knit pattern and how it was sewn. And so how many shoe companies do you think look at leaves for like their patterns? Not many.
Right.
And so for us, it's a challenge of like, where are we taking our inspiration from? If we're all getting inspired by Sunday service or the same person, it's all going to start to blend together. Which you see, I feel you see a lot of churches do.
Yeah.
You know, they'll kind of be like, oh, choirs are in. All right, let's all have a choir.
Yeah.
But the idea of like, let's go a step further. Like what our pastor calls it, like the second metric of like that next level.
Yeah.
And the idea of like, let's go another level deep. So are you looking like what, like a big thing for us is like, let's ask youth what they're into. Like, what are they looking at? And for us, like a lot of times, like it looks a little bit weird. Like I don't like it, but I kind of like it at the same time. Like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And like we've been made fun of a ton. Like we were made fun of when we need to start doing vlogs. We're like, this is not like, what is this? This is dumb. And looking back, a lot of it was dumb, but there were little bright spots that are like, okay, that right there. That's what we need more of. That made connection, that made community.
Yeah.
We came up with this weird branding for our summer camp in 2020. And the idea is like, when you see what God sees. And so the idea of like, our designer got in and basically like, he had like little kids, like 5-year-old kids draw shapes of animals. And that was like our branding. It was just super weird. And we were made fun of, but you see little parts of that now within our whole church, kind of like they've kind of taken that and kind of built on top of that, or taking little parts I liked about it. And so the idea of like, just like, what it's weird before it's cool. And so the idea of like, you always gotta be like capturing and like, there's that part of your mind that's always like has to be on a little bit of like, you know, you see a lot of times like with like meme pages, like they'll watch the Super Bowl and you'll see a meme about the Super Bowl, and it's just because they just had that mind, or that part of their mind kind of on like, oh, that's actually kind of funny. What am I that meant that a meme? And so for us, it's kind of like we're always like trying to get inspired by things that a lot of people maybe not look at, you know. So one of them was like, maybe it was a show about being in prison, and that kind of was inspired Paul. But the art of capture is what we call it.
You know, this is funny. And Josiah, I know you know this. My boys are both out in LA. Both go to Mosaic Church, and Ethan is on the creative team at Mosaic. Before he, and he won't mind me sharing this, but before he got out to LA, he was working remotely from Peoria, and at the time they were working on Pastor Urban McManus's new book, The Genius of Jesus. And so they wanted to send this box out to, you know, people so they'd read it, you know, Pastor Steven or Craig Rochelle.
It's actually called an influencer box.
Yeah. Look at you. Yeah, wow. Yeah. So he's got to come up with something, right? And this is probably one of his first things. And it's not just him. Collaboration is massive at Mosaic. But they wanted to create this box that would be really unique. And we were sitting at home and we were watching Wimbledon, the tennis, which has a very like royal type of brand, right? It's, you know, Queen goes there and everything else. And we saw them opening this box and it had like the Wimbledon seal on the tissue. And Ethan's like, that's it. We've got to create. So when they open, it feels like not just another book release, like, whoa, what is this? And it was great for me from that sitting on the couch to 3 or 4 months later, seeing people like Rich Wilson Jr. opening these boxes up on Instagram. And there's that tissue with the Genius of Jesus branding and the seal
and a tennis ball. It's like, wait a minute.
But you're absolutely right. Looking and seeing what is going on culturally that could be cool. And you're right. There's some things we've done at Mission Peoria, for instance, over the years. We're like, man, we're not doing that again. But you know what I mean? It's like, you don't know unless you give it a shot.
But I love that you're creating culture. Right. You know what I mean? Stepping out, doing new things, whatever it takes. And obviously some things work, some things don't, but you don't know unless you get out there and do it. And there's so many people that just sit on the sidelines and never do anything. And they just keep doing the same old thing over and over and over again that gets stale. So I'm loving hearing this.
Yeah.
So
we have Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just curious if how much Pastor Furtick has a say on some of the creative, because he's a creative genius as well, especially when it comes to music and writing. I mean, he was, he
Preaching.
wrote the blessing with Cody and Kerry Job. So very creative. The whole place is creative. Does he have any say in that? Obviously not so much probably with the youth, but as a whole.
Yeah. Patrick Steven, probably one of the most creative people I've ever met, just from like concepting to songwriting. Like, people don't understand how much he has a hand in every song that comes out of Elevation. And Pastor has had to kind of take a little, not a step back, but has kind of have to, Jeff Bezos talks about the idea of like, he has to make not a ton of decisions, but few decisions that all have if he makes them wrong, it could cost $5 million. If he makes it right, it could cost $5 million. So Pastor has had to like prioritize his decisions. So he definitely gets involved a lot with the creativity on some things. Like, but for him, he's had to take a little bit of a step back and focus more like, is a video that plays in an experience, or is that second lyric in blessing that it's going to be sung throughout years and years? Which one should take my time? And so there's definitely times where he does get involved. Like, he's very involved with the Elevation worship, with giving ideas. Like the old church basement cover was his idea, and so he definitely gets involved a lot. I think Pastor has kind of come to a season where he's able to give feedback on things. Like he'll text Tim or text something like this is great, or I would change this, or I would do this. And so, but anytime he kind of opens his mouth, it's just like, you're just pages of notes of like, oh my gosh, that's great. Why didn't I think of that? Like, there's something that we did for our staff meeting. It was in October, and the whole month was October, like Pastor Appreciation Month. And so we created this video for Pastor, and I kind of had the idea of what I wanted to do, and I just liked it. I didn't really know why I liked it, but I liked it. And then after Pastor came and kind of explained why that was so impactful, and then it's like, oh, there's the light bulb. That's why it was so great. And so he definitely at times will kind of come in and kind of interject and kind of give like his opinion or give his idea, which is always great. But he's kind of had to take a step back and really kind of have to focus on you have to give up something to go a little bit deeper. And so, a lot of pastors, like even Pastor Steven, like if you look at like 5 years ago, he said a lot more jokes in like his sermons, and now he's like had to give up those jokes to go deeper into his scripture. And so there's been certain things he's had to give up. And he used to watch every video that played in the experience. He used to watch everything that would go in the experience. He's had to realize, like, I need to put people in positions that can approve this, that I trust, and I need to focus on songs. I need to focus on sermons. I need to focus on this book, whatever it may be. And so it's kind of a yes and no. He does get involved, but I would say, for the most, especially with youth, for the most part, he's pretty remote.
That's good. Wow.
Yeah,
because you always think, when you see something like Elevation Church and all these other churches, how much the senior leader is involved and how much he trusts the team. And working very,
got to be a good balance.
Yeah, talking with Ethan a lot with Mosaic. Pastor Irwin trusts that team, right? He wouldn't have them in the positions. And yet, obviously Aaron, his son, is very close to Irwin. So I'm sure if there's something not going on, they're talking, but they've really been able to trust the team. And I was just, you're always, always thinking how involved, how not involved are they? And again, that comes down to trust in the team, which is really good. Well, Josiah, we have loved having you on, and I know there's a lot of creatives that are listening and maybe struggling, right? Especially with what you talked about earlier, trying to find your groove, trying to find, even if this church thing is what you were meant to do. Would you be so kind to pray just for folks that may be listening, to just try and help them out a little?
Yeah, 100%. Let's get into it. Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to come in today and just talk and just conversate about you. At the end of the day, creativity is created by you, made from you. You created this earth, you created us, and so we just thank you for the privilege to come and talk. And we just, anyone that's right now struggling with, feeling maybe not up to it, or maybe feeling not worthy, or maybe not feeling like they have it in them. We just ask that you would just place a note on their heart, place maybe a whisper of encouragement or hope of peace, and that you created them to be enough. You created them to create what you need. And we ask that you just, the people that may be struggling or not knowing what to do, like just, keep grinding, keep at it. And we ask that, you just speak to them, and they don't, they leave the politics out of it, they leave the voices out of it, they leave the fear out of it, they leave, all things that you haven't created out of it. We ask that you just really lift them up, that they feel encouraged, that they feel loved. We know that creatives can be a very temperamental person that we need. We're very needy, but we just thank you for today. We thank you for the gifts that you've given us, that we're able to use it for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank you, Josiah.
Josiah, how can people connect with you if they want to follow you on Instagram or the youth? I know you mentioned the Elevation Youth, but can you just go through those again?
Yeah. So my Instagram is JSIWOO. And then I have a link tree in there that has my Vimeo and other things that I do in there. But yeah, I'm always responding to DMs. If anyone has like any questions with that, I'm always responding. Maybe a Zoom call here and there. People, if they have more questions. But yeah, my Instagram's on there. I post quite a bit of our work on there, and then our youth accounts. I said the IG and the same thing. We have a link tree in that has our Instagram and everything else. And so usually anything I'm creating is gonna be on one of those 2 pages. And so that's how you would probably get connected with me on there.
Right. Well, we are going to go into the big three questions, right? People are wanting to know. So you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Pastor Steven Furtick, amazing preacher. Who else do you love to hear preach?
That's a good one.
And it doesn't have to be Elevation. It could be,
Yeah, I feel like my gut's saying some Elevation, but let me think. TD Bishop Jakes, I'd say would be the next person.
Yeah.
I know our pastor knows him.
Yes.
Anytime
you guys have had him several times.
Yeah.
In fact, it was, it's been a couple years ago, but there was a message, a night where TD was there at Elevation, and it impacted me in a huge way. It was about 3 years ago. I laid in bed and I actually cried listening to this message. I was at a place where I needed it, and it just filled me up. And it was so good to see them go back and forth. Man. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, Chuck, come on, give us to the next one.
All right. Okay. What is one sermon series, whether it's youth or whether it is Steven Furtick, what's one series that stands out above the rest for you?
Okay, there's so many. There's a lot that come to mind. There's one that, I'm doing 2 right now. I'm trying to think. There's so many good ones. I would probably say, I remember there's one sermon I go back to a lot when I'm kind of feeling a little bit weary or just tired or not feeling like I have what it takes. And it was a sermon out of the sermon series, Gates of Change. And one of the sermons, he talks about the idea of get back in the gate, and the idea of after Absalom died, David was weeping, and the idea of like his counselor kept him and said, you have to get back in the gate, and the idea of like getting back in the game. Pastor says it brilliantly and kind of gets into the idea. And every time I hear that sermon, I get recharged up and feel really good. So I'd probably say Gates of Change. I think it was a 2018 sermon series. It's on the Elevation Church YouTube, but it's really good stuff in there.
All right, man. Cool.
Okay, so you're a filmmaker. What films have impressed you lately? And it can be a Netflix like binge, because some of these series are just as good as a film. I mean, I know you're a few years late, but you just got out of Outer Banks.
I just finished it. I watched it via VidAngel. A lot of profanity. That's one of the greatest series I've seen. I mean, I was just all in. But anyway, yeah, go ahead. What?
Dang, there's I've definitely seen a few. I would probably say as far as like series go, I've really been into Yellowstone as of late. But from like that's more just like of like a story like fan. But as a filmmaker and creative, I'd probably say the best thing I've seen recently was Dune. Denis Villeneuve directed that one, and just the way he's able to take these epic sci-fi novels and put it onto a screen and look amazing. And I always love seeing like where they get their inspiration from. And they posted a video of all like the frames that the DP, I can't remember his name, but I follow him on Instagram. They showed like all like these frames from like Apocalypse Now, Space Odyssey, all of these old movies that they were inspired from. And they're able to take that and make this huge grand scale. Hans Zimmer did the music on it, which is he's phenomenal. And so I'd probably say that one's probably been the one I've been impacted by the most or the most inspired from recently.
And do you find it hard to watch a movie now because you're trying to break it down?
At times I feel like I feel that way in church a lot. Like I'll watch like a POV, something that I do, or like a testimony or a short film. And I'll try to break it down. I feel like with the big grand scale epic films, not so much. I feel like there are times where I'm able to see like these like there's like little tricks you get taught of like how they film it to where you kind of know like sometimes it'll be like this big reveal and I'll kind of have figured it out by then. But in the day, no, I just love watching movies. So it's a good way for me to get energized. We talk about the idea of getting energized at church and being intentional with your time off, and the idea of like do something that energizes you. And so for some people it might be going walking, some people might be on Pinterest, some people might be cooking. But one of mine is I just love watching good movies. So it's kind of a way for me to kind of reset and get excited and get inspired.
Yeah, I drive my wife crazy when we go to church or visit churches or, out of town, going places, because my creative mind is
critiquing
how, hey, they could have done this better, or man, how did they do that? Or so it is hard sometimes for me to just, like step back, enjoy.
It definitely is a challenge too, like even in worship, like having like just shut my mind off, like, okay, just be still, be here. Don't like be in the moment. And it's something I've not perfected it yet. Like I say, my wife, she'll get really annoyed. I'll like whisper in her ear, be like, and so it definitely is a talent I've not yet mastered, but it is a struggle for people that work in this industry. Like we know, like we'll kind of critique it and kind of deconstruct it. It's tough to kind of be like, no, what is God trying to tell me in this moment, in this worship set?
Well, Josiah, we want to thank you for coming on Revival Town podcast today. I know people, especially the creatives, are going to absolutely love this. And who knows, down the road, we'll get you back on. I was just thinking, I don't know if we could ever pull this off, but how cool it would be to get Josiah, Ethan, who's at Mosaic, perhaps Drew Powell from Crosspoint, and we do this type of inter-church type of creative session. That'd be cool. So we'll try and work on that. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Really cool.
Sounds great.
Panel of creativity.
But
nice little round table.
So much. Thank you so much for being on. And please, folks that are listening, make sure you're checking out Josiah's work and everything that's going on at Elevation. Thanks so much, Josiah.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. It's been a great time.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks.